Would you pay $1,000 for a 1 metre cable? Sorry about the clickbait title of this video. It isn't $1,000 US. Nowhere near, in fact. It's 1,000 Great British pounds. And not just that, it's from £1,000. So expect to pay from $1,250 US for your 1 metre cable. A metre is about 3 feet, by the way, for the 3 countries in the world that don't use the metric system: Liberia, Myanmar, and you know who you are. So you'd expect me to be sceptical about this. Can a £1,000 cable really provide £1,000 worth of value? Well, no. And maybe yes. I'm going to unpick the strands of this, not the strands of the cable. Firstly, though, I have to mention that hi-fi enthusiasts don't call a cable a cable. They call it an interconnect. Betty.
In hi-fi audio systems, an interconnect refers to the cables and connectors used to connect various audio components together. These components can include amplifiers, preamplifiers, CD players, turntables, digital to analog converters, and other audio equipment. Interconnects are responsible for transmitting the audio signal between the components while minimizing signal degradation and interference.
Betty tells me she got that from ChatGPT because Google just thought that she wanted to buy one. Anyway, this 1 metre cable that costs £1,000, it's the Signature X tuned Aray from the Chord Company. That's A-R-A-Y. It was mightily difficult to find out on the web what Aray stands for. I couldn't find it on the Chord Company website, and neither could Google. Not saying it's not there, but I set Betty on the task, and she found this.
ARAY stands for Audio Reflection Attenuation Yoke.
I'll come back to this later. So, specifically what I'm looking at, having just seen a press release, is the Signature X tuned Aray analog RCA cable, which combines 2 channels of cabling terminating in RCA connectors at both ends. RCA connectors, by the way, are also known as phono connectors, short for phonograph. They were invented in the 1930s. Anyway, these are just details. What matters is what this cable sounds like. It
will deliver music with high levels of detail and an extraordinary level of cohesiveness. Signature-tuned ARAY interconnects simply open up the real performance of your system and let the music pour out. Nonetheless, the change produced by the tuned ARAY was dramatic. Notes stopped and started more precisely, and unclear sounds were now easily identified. Timing was massively improved, and these factors colluded to produce a powerful sense of live music being played in front of us.
So clearly, the audiophile experts who voiced these opinions know a good thing when they hear it. Betty is quoting word for word, and you can search these references on the web. What makes this cable so good then? Let me count the ways. Firstly, we have ultra-low mass RCA connectors with precision PTFE surrounds. PTFE, to start with that, is also known as polytetrafluoroethylene, which of course you knew already. You'll also know it as Teflon. I'm just a simple person, so what I'd be looking for in a precision surround is that it works, is hard-wearing, long-lasting, and easy to grip. Teflon is known for its non-stick properties, but I suspect that the gripability here is just fine. Now, I may come across as being a bit cynical sometimes, but there are points here that may be of genuine relevance, such as the dielectric constant, dielectric strength, and magnetic susceptibility of the material. I don't doubt that these properties have the potential to be relevant to audio, and I'll come on to the issue of relevance later. Circling back a bit, I note that the connectors are ultra-low mass. I can't see any advantage here other than maybe the connectors don't put any strain on the sockets they're inserted into. What I suspect here is an old marketer's trick of taking a feature that isn't in any way extraordinary and making it seem as though it is. That's just my thought. I have no basis in fact. Moving on, what's new is that the contact areas are plated with core alloy TM plating technology. I think this could potentially be interesting. As you know, copper is a great metal for audio signals, highly conductive and not too costly. Silver is better, but, well, cost. The Chord Company has some interesting information here. I'll summarise it a bit. Silver is great, but it tarnishes caused by sulphur in the air. This isn't so bad electrically because it takes a long time to appear and is easily removed. But it doesn't look good. Also, the cord company says that the tarnish causes intermodulation effects at high frequencies. These frequencies will be outside of the normal audio bandwidth and have largely been ignored so far. Now, if this is a real issue and Chord's plating technology can eliminate it, I'm all for that. I don't believe that just good enough is good enough. More than good enough is good enough. But again, I'll consider relevance later. Moving on from the connectors, and when I say moving, with many audiophile cables, you have to make sure that the cable is the right way round so that the signal flows in the right direction. Moving on from the connectors, we have the cable itself. On the outside, the insulation is cross-linked polythene, commonly abbreviated as PEX, XPE or XLPE. You'll find this in pipework, high-voltage electrical cables, and baby playmats apparently. What's good about XLPE is that cross-linking improves impact strength, abrasion resistance and cracking over regular polythene, while reducing rigidity, which of course will help the cable be flexible. Similarly to what I said about the connectors, I'd guess that XLPE is very commonly used in audio cables and is not really a special thing at all. Now, whatever is separating the conductors from each other and from the shield is important. It has to be an insulator, obviously, but unless it's a vacuum, then it has properties such as electric susceptibility and relative permittivity, and you'll need to familiarise yourself with the Kramer's-Kronig constraints on the real and imaginary parts of the susceptibility. In fact, even a vacuum has properties, but I doubt whether we need concern ourselves about that. Needless to say, no ordinary person can understand any of this, and any expert with any degree of persuasiveness can make us think one way today, another way tomorrow. This is why I always come back to frequency response, distortion and noise and phase. Does this cable have any problem with these real, measurable and audible factors? I very much doubt it, but I could say that about any reasonably well-made audio cable, couldn't I? Now, on to the conductors. Multi-stranded, silver-plated, oxygen-free, copper. Multi-stranded, this is good. And of course you can get multi-stranded audio cables from AliExpress if you want. I've just looked at one for £8.89, including shipping from China. Multi-stranded is good because it's flexible. Now, silver-plated. Well, silver is more conductive than copper, so that's good. And if the conductors were solid silver, multiple strands, then the cost would probably have been £10,000, not £1,000. Someone would still buy it. Oxygen-free copper. Well, this is good as well, if not as good as silver, because it's more conductive than regular copper. Oh, my AliExpress cable has this too. Now, what is interesting is the tuned Aray bit, or what I think is the tuned Aray bit, because the information I can find isn't all that detailed, and some of it is second-hand and not from the actual horse's mouth. But hey. If you remember, Betty said that Aray stands for Audio Reflection Attenuation Yoke. I'm guessing that tuned Aray targets a specific band of frequencies. That's what tuned means in my dictionary anyway. So what is the problem that tuned Aray is meant to solve, according to the information I've found? It seems to be that the problem is that a cable can act as a transmission line. Signal will bounce back and forth from any discontinuities, such as connectors, and obviously we have connectors at both ends. The problem, according to the high priests of audio, is that transients get smeared. Also, it's a certain fact that when a sound or signal mixes with its own reflection, we get comb filtering. So tuned Aray, again, according to the information I can find, resolves this by adding a short piece of cable to the actual cable, folded back internally. Could this perhaps be a stub filter? Well, I can see a lot about this if I research transmission lines at radio frequencies. Radio frequencies, not audio frequencies. I'll let Betty have her say with a quote from a paper titled Transmission Lines at Audio Frequencies and a Bit of History by Jim Brown of Audio Systems Group.
At audio frequencies, a cable less than 2,000 feet long is no more complicated than its series resistance and parallel capacitance. As the cable becomes longer, or as frequency increases, the cable will begin to behave as a transmission line.
OK, and you will find similar learned references elsewhere. It's that unless the cable is really long, and 2,000 feet is the same as just over 600 metres, this will never be a problem in any hi-fi or studio installation. And don't forget, the cable I'm talking about here is just 1 metre long. And to add one more reference point, I used to work in one of the biggest theatres in the UK with long cable runs. Transient smearing, comb filtering, nope, I never heard any of that. At this point, I think I'm done. I could have mentioned the zero compression strain relief system that apparently avoids any changes in impedance where the cable is terminated, and the issue of geometry that could have been interesting if only I could find out more about it. My suspicion is that if this cable were tested for frequency response, distortion and noise, it would check out just as well as my AliExpress example. In fact, I'd expect it to check out at least 10 times as well, because then I'd feel as though I was getting some value for my money. What's missing from the information I can see in this press release and on the cord company's website is anything about this cable's resistance to interference, which is another important parameter. But perhaps we can just trust in the high-density silver-plated braid and foil combination shielding. Having said that, there is an interesting quote on the website that I'll link in the description. So I'm trying to keep an open mind on this, and of course I accept that a poor quality cable will affect the sound you hear. But this 1 metre cable costs £1,000. £1,000 for 1 metre. £1 for every millimetre. How much cable has the signal gone through in this before it even has the chance to get onto vinyl, CD or your favourite streaming service? And how much would the console cost if every metre of cable inside cost £1,000? I said I would come back to relevance, and this is the point where I do. What's relevant here is how the cable performs at audio frequencies, not how it performs at radio frequencies. For relevant audio frequencies, I'll go up to 100 kHz. No one can hear that, but if everything measures fine up to that frequency, and I want everything that's relevant to be measured, then the performance of the cable will be beyond all possible doubt. So where am I with this? There's no way I personally will spend £1,000 on a 1 metre twin RCA cable. It's just a no. If it made the same difference as going from cassette, high quality with Dolby, to CD, that magnitude of a difference, then yes, for even £1,000, I'd do it. If there's a difference that's measurable in the audio range, even if I can't hear it, then maybe I'd put this cable on my wish list. I can see a certain amount of visual beauty in these cables, and there's nothing wrong with things looking good or looking purposeful. I'd probably wish that the connectors on my hi-fi were on the front so that I could show the cables off. No, I'm not bothered about that. But some people are, and if that's how they get their pleasure, then go for it. If the aim is to push the physical boundaries of what a cable can achieve, all the way up to radio frequencies that even the battiest of bats can't hear even a tenth or a hundredth of, well, once again, why not? As long as audio frequencies aren't compromised. I'd still like to see the specs, though. But this is just me. What do you think? Does a mere metre of cable make a difference? Is the difference worth £1,000, more than $1,000? Is technical excellence a worthy pursuit in its own right, even if no one can hear the difference? Should we have access to more technical information, more hard specifications? You may have your own thoughts. Let me know and I'll consider making another video on this topic. See you soon.